All right. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 looks at evaluating nutritional information. We are going to look at how we evaluate it, studies and whatnot, and a basic understanding of what the science is behind it, in terms of how we should go about experimenting and how we should do that. And then I think a little bit later, so we'll look at the scientific method. And then a little bit later, we'll look at some of the ways in which we gather a whole heck of a lot of information, because, gathering information in your office, that's great, but that's only like a few hundred people, maybe a few thousand people. We need the pooling of hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people if possible, to get good, solid, predictable information that we can apply to a larger populace, instead of just the handful of random people that come into our offices. So that's what we're going to look at here today in terms of evaluating nutritional information. It's kind of interesting here. Our concept of this is, there is so much research out there. A little bit later, I'll show a couple. There's a couple websites out there that are pretty cool. They're all pay for the most part, which kind of stinks. But there's this cool website that kind of populates all this information on nutrition. And if I remember, I'll show you here. And just the sheer amount of diving in and parsing out and figuring out what this does and what that does, it's really quite amazing. And we really had no idea, until we started mass producing a lot of different foods and whatnot. This here pellagra was just rampant all over. It was a major cause of death in the world in the early 1900s. And symptoms, as you can kind of see over here, and we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this later here. But we took this information, and you don't need to know Goldberger, okay? But this dude right here took all of these symptoms, and it's the 4 Ds: dermatitis, diarrhea, dementia, confusion, and death. Took this information and tried to figure out what was the common goal, what was the common factor among all of these individuals who are suffering from this pretty non-debilitating to a massively debilitating condition known as pellagra here. So he had a hypothesis. And he thought that these individuals were potentially lacking something from their diet. And this is really kind of the first time that we come up with this concept of what a vitamin is. His hypothesis was that something was lacking from their diets. What is a hypothesis? Just a guess, right? Possible explanation for what in the world is happening to the individuals here. So you can see what he hypothesized here: missing dietary factors, and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, did his test and gave these people that food. Gave these people these different foods, and wham, all of their symptoms went away. To prove that it wasn't just something being transmitted and it was something that was lacking from their diet there, you can see that they injected individuals, that they had filth parties, which I just think is hilarious. So that's why it's in there. Allow these people to just interact with one another and hang out, I guess, and party and filth. I don't know. But there was no transmission of this condition, of this disease, by that. This further held up his discovery that it was something in our diets. And that led us to the discovery of vitamins. It was later discovered that it was niacin that was lacking from their diets. And all we had to do was treat with niacin, and niacin is used for a lot of fantastic, fun things. But this is the scientific method in its most basic form. You see something, you see an issue, you see a problem, you make an educated guess, hypothesis, do an experiment, Do another one. Do another one. And if that information keeps being backed up, well, now we have solid concrete evidence that there is a this for this causation. And that's not always the case. In a lot of research, it's very difficult to find a direct causation. Okay? Where this specific thing causes this specific outcome. That's very difficult for a number of reasons, and those things are called variables. Okay? Correlations are generally what we find more times than not. Okay? Just because a classic example is, grilling. That char that happens when you put cold meat down on a very, very, very hot grill. That's why it's not supposed to get like extremely hot. Okay. But that interaction produces these chemicals that can cause cancer. And so that's where that study came out, that news release came out that grilling causes cancer. It can, but that's not true. I mean, that's a whole hell of a lot of grilled meat that one has to consume to have a direct cause with grilling causing cancer. They're correlated, but it's a totality of everything. Okay? Do you eat meat all the time on the grill? Do you eat meat all the time? Do you not eat vegetables? Do you not exercise? Do you smoke? Do you drink? There are a number of other things that go into it. So when we say correlation, okay, it's correlated. That's not a causation. That's not a direct 1 to 2 or A to B causing things. And that's what we usually find with a lot of scientific studies.